Welcome to Simon Says Let's Play Board Games, Board Game Reviews and Reflections, and I'm your host, Nate Simons. Welcome to episode 3 of our Gamers Ranch gameplay reviews. A little background here if you haven't watched the first 2 episodes. A group of us guys went to Bland, Missouri to the Gamers Ranch, which is a gaming getaway retreat. We went there for 4 days, and this is kind of a recap of all the games that we played over the weekend and our reviews and thoughts on those games. Following that 4-day weekend, we did spend a 3-hour episode, if you will, recording those thoughts and feedbacks, only to find out that my mic wasn't working. So here we are today. I'm recapping these games in kind of thematic sections. Today we're going with a little more of the advanced strategy games that we played over the weekend. So I will give you my thoughts here, and then I will cut in thoughts from the previously recorded session so you can hear thoughts from the rest of the group. Today, we are starting with our first game, which is, I believe it's pronounced Tiletum. This is by designers Simone Luciani and Daniel Tazzini. I believe they are most notably known for this T series of games. I think one of probably the most popular ones is Tzolk'in. There's also Teotihuacan. Anyways, this is another in that series. It is what I would dub a heavier strategy game. And thematically and mechanically follows with heavy dice mechanics. So to start, the main mechanic of this game centers around this dice wheel. And at a very high level, the color of the dice will dictate the number of resources you get, while the number of pips on the dice dictate how much you get to take that action. So there is a balance between either getting a low amount of resources and being able to do the action a lot, or vice versa, right? Being able to do the action very little, but getting a high amount of resources. Just as an example here, you can see like here you would get 4 resources, and I think the inverse of that, you'd get 3 of these actions here. So that's kind of the main mechanism of drafting those dice to take the actions holistically. I would actually dub this kind of a point salad game. There's lots of different things to concentrate on. There is an element here of kind of maybe area control, pick up and deliver, where you are kind of moving around the board. You have to get your architects on these spots and your pillars, and you're trying to build these different cathedrals. Obviously, if you're the first to build that cathedral, you get more points. On the sideboard here, there's little character cards that you're drafting to fill up your individual player boards with those characters. You've also got a mechanism here that kind of determines turn order and bonus tiles. It is a game where there is a lot going on. I did enjoy this game. I'll be honest, trying to reflect now, I don't think that there's any one thing that stuck out that I really enjoyed. I did think that the dice drafting mechanism, balancing the resources with the action, was very cool. One of the things that I do remember specifically around this game is that you do have to, up here, it's kind of blurred in this picture, but there are these round scoring tiles. And again, this stuck out to me, is that you really have to plan around those round scoring tiles. In fact, you kind of have to build towards those future round scoring tiles to make sure that you can get a lot of points. We had one gentleman at the table who didn't do that and was literally just kind of building around the short-term strategies of getting as many points as he could in that particular round. And in the first 2 or 3 rounds, I think he was blowing everybody away. Like comparatively, he was probably 10, 20 points ahead of us. As the game progressed and we got into those 3rd, 4th, and final scoring rounds, I think all of us, maybe barring one, ended up lapping him on the score track. So it is certainly one of those games. It felt bad for the guy. But it is one of those games that you have to actually kind of look forward and plan for those future scoring rounds to kind of, maximize your scoring potential. Which honestly, if I think about the other, 2T series of games that I mentioned, Teotihuacan and Tzolk'in, it's the same thing. You kind of have to look at those big scoring cards, and you may not be getting a lot of points in the first, few entry rounds or scoring opportunities there, but you're really building for those big payouts in the final rounds. Anyways, overall enjoyable game. I do think if we go back here, I believe this is rated pretty favorably. So yeah, it's in the top 300 here overall, 311 I should say, so just out of the top 300, and 175 in strategy, which given the breadth of games that are on BGG, that's actually pretty good, and I think this whole is holding up over time. So let's cut over to see what the guys had to say on this one.
Yeah, so this is from the designer who's done T games like Sulkin and help me out, Nate. What else has he done?
Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan. Yeah, yeah. So this game, spoiler alert, I liked it. I'm not sure everyone at the table liked it quite as much as me. I would describe this game as like a classic Euro with modern twists. Um, the the really unique thing about this game is when it's your turn, you pick from a dice in like a circular area. There it is. So like you might pick the dice that has like the 1 pip on it. The number of pips are going to give you the amount of resources associated with the color of the dice. So you'll get like 1 black resource if you put the black dice. But then inversely, you'll get 6 action points because of the low number of pips. So pips plus resources is always equal to 7. So more resources you get, fewer action points. There's 6 different actions you can take that help you move guys around a map, build things, and score points. There's 4 scoring phases over the course of the game. It will tell you what cities are going to be scored, and you know what you have to do to build in those cities in advance, so you can plan for the future. And I really liked it. I think it's the best e-game that I've played, with the exception of possibly Sulkin.
Yeah, I really liked it as well. There are some objectives that you can see early on. One thing that I didn't probably give enough credence to is that little circular action icon in the middle is assigned to a specific action type, and each round that is going to spin 1 position, and so uh, the action that you have 6 pips to actually take the action on this turn. Next turn you only have 1, or vice versa. I don't remember which way it spun, but either way, you have to really recognize what you want to do and plan your actions according to that, and what is going to be coming up, and position yourself so that you can execute on your plan for that next round. So overall, it was pretty heavy strategy. Overall, the mechanics weren't all that difficult to understand, but from a long-term strategy planning aspect, it is a really good game, with really the dice rolling being the only unknown there, but there is some ability to change a die to a different number so that you can take an action that you want to if there's dice scarcity.
All right, the next game here is Earth. This is another one that I think shortly after we got together, this had just come out shortly before we had gotten to Gamers Ranch. I had actually attained a copy of this, and so this was one of them that, coming into Gamers Ranch, I had already previously played. I was able to pull together a group of guys, taught it to them. We played it. Everybody enjoyed it. The next morning, one of the guys asked if they could play it again, and so I sat in and did the rules teach, and kind of monitored them and answered questions and things like that. I love this game. I've played it, I don't know, between both, physical version, and it's now on Board Game Arena. I've probably played this 20 plus times. Um, and it is certainly one of those games that the more you play it, you start to understand more of the depth of strategy in terms of how you build your tableau and start chaining different cards together. So to explain the game a little bit, you are building a 4x4 grid of cards in front of yourself, and that is facilitated by taking one of these 4 actions. So every round, a player will choose one of these actions, and they, as the person who chose the action, get to take a set of actions or choose from one of 2 actions. Then everybody else at the table gets to follow that action. and take kind of a secondary minor version of that action, not quite as strong. That is one of the strong suits of this game, is that even when it's not your turn, you are still engaged in the game. You're specifically paying attention to what action the other character or the other opponents are playing, and then figuring out what you're going to do to kind of capitalize on that and either get cards played in your tableau or start gaining resources, things like that. There is a tactical element to this in terms of there are a lot of cards, you can kind of see it here, that reference, they have these arrows on them. So you can see this guy here gets a bonus for building cards adjacent to this particular card. Now I can't read exactly what that says, but there's a few of those cards where, again, tactically you're trying to play that, and then you might want to surround that particular card with flora or mushrooms or things like that, and you'll start to get bonus points. So there's not only that element of balancing kind of how you're going to lay out your board, but the other thing is the actual actions on the card. Every time that somebody chooses one of these actions, you get to not only take that action, but then you also get to activate every card that has that same color on your tableau. And you do it from left to right, top to bottom in your tableau. But just as an example, if somebody were to activate the orange action, you'd get to activate this card, this card, this card. These cards are really cool because they're rainbow, right? They activate on at least 3 of the actions here. So there's another element to that, is to putting your cards in the order of like, okay, I might be able to get a sprout here, which I can then spend on this card here to get victory points, so on and so forth. So you start to chain together some things like that. There's also some common goal cards that are on the central player board. That's kind of the player interaction element, is you're competing to complete those goals. The first person to complete that goal gets a higher victory point payout than others. Again, I've played this game 20 plus times. I still enjoy it. I still feel like, every time I play it, a new strategy might reveal itself to me. And I think, I know here they are releasing an expansion to this that I will most certainly get, because again, I think it increases the player interaction, and I love this mechanism. I think there's more that could be added to this game to just to make it more fun. One other quick anecdote in terms of my experience with this game at Gamers Ranch. We played the first day. Again, it was a teaching game, so I taught a number of the guys. It was their first time playing. They all enjoyed it. The following morning, one of the guys specifically asked, if they could play it again and have me do the rules teach. And that particular player, although the previous night did not perform great, I think he might have got, out of the 4-player game, I think he might have got 3rd or 4th. So then on his second time playing, he actually finished 1st place, if I remember correctly, and by quite a big margin. So it's a proud moment for him, proud moment for me as a teacher, because again, I think he started to understand and grasp some of the strategy and concepts to the game, which he was immediately able to kind of turn around and capitalize on this. But a great, fairly quick playing, card tableau building, combo chaining game. And so if any of those mechanisms sound cool to you, I would definitely encourage you to check this out. Let's hear what the guys had to say about this one.
Earth is a great game, I thought. It was
Good.
It's a good planet. My number one.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, so I would describe, and I'm stealing Nate's words, it's multiplayer solitaire for the most part. You are competing to a small degree to be the first to achieve objectives in the game, but you are it's a very card heavy game. The artwork is fantastic. Each of the cards, I believe, is an individual plant type with some individual abilities. Each of the plant type that's in real life, it's got a little description of what the plant is, or or fungus, or whatever that is. So it's a really good game, probably for young to middle-aged kids, just to kind of get them a little bit engaged with some flora of the world. overall, I would say it's one of the good and the bad things is having so many cards and having a limited number of objectives. So playing it a few times, you may be able to play the odds a little bit better than I did as you look at the objective cards. So you have personal and group objectives. So your personal one, only you are trying to achieve that. The group objectives is free for everyone to achieve, and there's diminishing returns for being the second, third, or fourth person to achieve that. And so, if you get a really good card or initial objective, and you can achieve that, the points are can be, at least in my one play of it, differentiating. Like my Aiden, my nephew, was playing with us, and he had one card I think that gave him 35 or 40 points, and it was just tough to come back. So he ended up winning that game with a few big scoring cards that just happened to come out. I don't think we made it through probably half the deck playing as 4 players, but yeah, some of the functionality, some of the season choices that you're making are all typically tailored to what you're doing. You're not looking at other tableaus of the cards. You're, as you see here, working on a 4x4 tableau. You're not looking to block them from doing anything. Really, you're just trying to make the best decision for you. But as another player in the game, whatever that person chooses, you get some side effect of that, or a lesser effect for their choice. So overall, I rate this game pretty highly. I thought it was really fun for what it was. I like the artwork, and overall, every game is going to be different just because of the sheer number of cards that you've got there.
Yeah, this game reminds me a ton of games like Terraforming Mars, Wingspan, where, and I do like that phrase, like you're playing solitaire kind of. It's impossible to keep track of what everyone's trying to do, so you're really just focused on yourself, your own tableau, what kind of combos you can do. I think it's really hard. It would be really hard to start a game and say, "Yep, this is the strategy I'm going to do." So I think I actually like that part of Terraforming Mars in games like this, where your strategy has to evolve over time, and you have to be able to react to what types of cards you're drawing. Yeah, I enjoy this game. I like games like this. Um, I did like this game. I don't remember how I did. But yeah, this was a fun game. Would play.
Yeah, this game was fun. It's definitely in the vein of Terraforming Mars, Arc Nova, Wingspan, just because of the sheer number of cards, and every game's going to play out different. One thing that it does different from those games that I really like is threaded turns, as Garrett mentioned. So when you are the main player, you can choose from one of 4 actions, and then you get the more powerful benefit of the action that you choose, and everybody else gets a lesser benefit of that action. That's really good. There's a lot that I should like about this game, and I do like it, but to me, I don't like it as much as I like Terraforming Mars or Arc Nova. And maybe that's because I've only played this one time and I haven't been able to explore the depths of it as much. I would definitely play it again, but for me, as of right now, it doesn't rank as highly as some of those other comparable games.
Yeah, so I'll tell you. So I was in the same game with Dustin and Dan. The other player was my brother, who he had just played it the first time around with Garrett's group. And I think, if I remember correctly, he finished last in that game, and then he played it back to back with 3 guys who had never played it before,
Oh
and
yeah,
he
he
just
steamrolled us.
smashed us all.
Now I
And
remember.
yeah, and so I think that's like, and I finished last, and a small part of me is like, yeah, I mean, I would definitely need to play again to like, I mean, he was doing things that it just didn't even, I couldn't even figure out like how he was so far ahead. Of course, it's my first game. There's a lot of complexity. I'm trying to figure out my own little island, but I did look over every once in a while, and he's got like 10 more cards built than I had built. He's got like all these game objectives completed. I had no idea like how he even got there, because it's so hard to pay attention. I thought I had a little strategy going. Towards the end, you're just trying to fill stuff in and hope it works. And I don't know. I convinced myself that that the fact that I have not played Terraforming Mars very much, I played it once, forever ago, that did not help me because I didn't have that to fall back on. But I would say I struggled with it. I couldn't say if I liked it or not, didn't like it, just because I had such a rough experience trying to tame the beast.
It does feel like a game like Ark Nova or Terraforming Mars. There's more of a buildup, whereas here, you're right, you can get an engine up and going pretty quick. And one cool thing that I think this game does that I really like is, and you can kind of see it in this picture, at the bottom of every card, there's a color on that card. And if the action associated with that color is executed, you get the benefit of a card. So it's like a tableau building, engine building game. um I think it's just hard. It's so much to take in on your first play, just because every card is unique, and of course you're trying to absorb the rules, and then also try to figure out how to build an efficient engine. It would benefit from repeated plays. It's a good game.
All right, the next game here is Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland. Going into Gamers Ranch, this one was on my want to play list because I'd heard a couple of different podcast reviews about it and heard this described as a trick taking dudes on a map game. And so, as I understood it, the trick taking, playing cards in terms of suit, high card in the suit, following suit, things like that, is what actually drives the actions that you take. And then in the end, it's kind of an area control and battling game in terms of the actual board that you're trying to play. Um, After having played it, I don't know that I would exactly call this trick taking. Yes, there's a trick taking vibe to it in terms of the cards that you play. There are different suits, if you will, in terms of like the red war suit or the red war suit here, the blue. I think this is like the clergy or church suit here, and then you can see the numbers on here. So yes, that is an element where the lead player is playing a card with a particular suit. You can follow that suit, and if you have the highest number in that particular suit, you basically take first action for that round. Um, that being said, there are certainly reasons to not play the same suit as the character. So I don't know. That's kind of the differentiation for me. Is like there's a lot of strategies where you don't want to follow suit, or perhaps you're actually incentivized to take the last action in the round because you want to react to what the other characters are doing. Be that as it may, was a cool game. I enjoyed it. The main point scoring mechanism, I would say, is the area control of these different provinces within Ireland or territories within Ireland on the board, right? And trying to get your discs in there. There are also battles that you have to fight, which can win you points. There's what I believe is referred to as a marriage track, where every round there will be a wife or a husband that's available on the board, and if you can get highest up on that marriage track, you actually get to draft, or you get to take that card into your hand as kind of another additional card. I really like that mechanism because you might actually concentrate on that track for the first couple rounds to kind of get those additional cards into your hand, which allows you some more flexibility in later rounds. There's also this church or clergy track up here, which if you can win on that, not only can you get additional victory points, but you can maybe get some more of your discs on the board. I felt like everything came together fairly well. Thought it was a very enjoyable game. I believe there's a lot of strategy to it. Now, here's the thing. I played it. I loved it. I got home and convinced myself that I needed to own this game. And to this day, I haven't bought it, just haven't pulled the trigger on it. Um, I own a lot of these dudes on the map. I would actually say that dudes on a map, area control, battle type mechanism is probably one of my favorites. And I don't know, as time has gone on, I just felt like maybe I don't need another one of these. I still, again, I still think highly of my play of this. I think it's a cool mechanism of the card play to, drive the actions that you take for that round. So if any of that sounds intriguing, I think you owe it to yourself to at least check this out. And let's hear what the other guys had to say on this.
Well, I was just gonna say, to your point of you'd like to play this again, gaming with this group of people, um, and you don't often get to play the same game more than once. That that's hard for me. And this game I feel like is one where you need to, or at least I need to be able to play it more than once. Like my experience in this game was a ton different than yours. Um, you mentioned, you want to win that area, and then you can start expanding by even losing, which is kind of a cool thing. But I lost a ton and couldn't expand because I didn't have a single area on the board for a long time because everyone was trying to win. So I amassed a ton of gold, but it didn't really do a whole lot for me. Um, and then like Garrett, your nephew Aiden, like had the most amazing cards every single time. Like I was never dealt awesome cards, and then I was always like far from him. Like there's a drafting element to when you're getting your cards, which I think is good. I think it's the right thing to do. It's a good way to balance out like if you're dealt a handful of amazing cards. But um, yeah, I feel like this is a game where I would want to play it again. And I probably never play this game again, to be honest, unless you buy it and Nate and we play it again. But even if we play it again, we'll probably only be once. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna echo you guys. It fell a little flat for me. Like you mentioned, Aiden. So I was sitting to his left. I'll tell you, he was not dealt a full hand of awesome cards. He was dealt like one awesome card and then a bunch of crappy cards because he would like keep the best one, hand me like the worst card. I mean, like just like some of the lowest cards in the game, and then he must have gotten some good ones from his right and took the best one off of that. And like,
Well, remember how I tried to house rule the choose two and then pass?
something
Because it doesn't make sense. So,
I,
yeah,
I'd have rather just deal out the cards or something. I don't know. Like that wasn't working. And then the other thing I want to bring up is like Nate always keeps describing it as like the mechanic is trick taking. I did not have that feeling at all. That's not how I felt. I did not feel like I was playing a trick taking, like playing a trick and trying to win it. To me, it felt a lot like a broom service type of thing. Other people were gonna play. Are they gonna play high? Are they gonna play low? And then you were trying to compensate for that. I did not have the. I mean, I've played tons of trick taking games. At no point did I feel like I was like trying to figure out how many tricks I could take. It was very like one off. Every time was different, and I was really I was looking directly at like what color are we playing, and do I think that person is going to go high or low, and do I want to try to win it or not? But it did not. I'll just say again, it did not have a trick taking feel to me at all.
I would agree with that. I don't think I love trick taking games, and it felt as though you were just playing a card on an individual trick, because the action resolution actually started from the lowest card and worked its way up. So if you play the lowest card, you get more benefit, but you go first, and so you get a benefit, but you go first, and sometimes first to the trough was an advantage. And so, yeah, you had to balance playing your high cards when you felt necessary and your low cards. But yeah, I would agree. This one felt a little flat, fell a little flat. But as I mentioned before, I'm not a huge area control game, and just the nuance here wasn't enough to overcome that for me.
All right, the next game on the list is Fall of the Mountain King. This is the follow-up game to Hall of the Mountain King, which, just quick side conversation, I love Hall of the Mountain King. Maybe in my top 10 games of all time. Not just, thematic and artwork and components there, but it's a really cool mechanism of chaining your resources. Anyways, we're not talking about Hall of the Mountain King. But this is one of the games that Dave had at the Gavers Ranch. I think it was still in shrink wrap, so had the pleasure of unboxing this behemoth, if you will. And then total, I think I invested probably 6 hours in this game between unboxing, punching all the components, getting everything into its, it comes with these game trays, so segregating everything out into the game trays, reading the rules, getting the game set up, and then walking through the gameplay with a full complement of 5 players. Uh, that being said, this was probably one of my worst experiences game wise for the Gamers Ranch over the weekend. And let me explain that a little bit. Not that this game is, it's not the worst game that I've played, right? I just personally think for all the time that I invested in this and then what I got out of it, it just seemed like almost a waste of a day to put so much effort into this. Anyways, to point out a few things, this is, I think, the central mechanic or main mechanic is an area control mechanic, right? But to facilitate that, there is a action selection mechanism that is based off of a grid of cards that you play in front of yourself. I'm trying to get a really good picture here. This is probably the best representation. Each turn, you will play one of these cards out out in front of you and start creating your own personal grid. Now, each round, then, you can place one of your markers on these, and you can take what's called a minor action. And as an example, setting a single resource on this shield would let you take that minor action. You can see some of the minor actions are buffed, if you will. So it's like this one, it would be a minor action. You get to take the shield action 2 times. Additionally, you can take what's called a major action. And the cool thing about major action is you start to chain together adjacent resources. Here's a quick example of you chain. It looks like this player has chained together these 2 particular icons, which I think would be 2, but it looks like maybe that was a doubled up action. So they would get to take the hammer actions a total of 2 or maybe even 3 times here. Again, this comes together organically, but let's, for demonstration purposes, say that there was already a cube here on this white action. On a later turn, if I laid down cubes on this green one, and this green one, any cubes that are already on the board, they quote fill in the gaps. So now I've chained these 2 hammer actions to this hammer action over here. I get to take a total of 3. Again, if this was 2, maybe 4 actions. That mechanism in and of itself was really cool. Deciding how to build your tableau, where to place those action pieces, and then really trying to manipulate and tactically chain together some of those larger actions to at the right time to kind of make a big surge on the board there. So that mechanism was cool. I think then as it translates to the stuff that you're doing on the board and you're trying to get pieces out on the board, there's an area control element. Let me go back just a little bit here, see if we can find a good picture of the board overview. So here it is. There are different sections here, and so as you control more sections, you're vying for more influence in those particular clans, like the purple clan, the orange clan, green clan, things like that, which will garner you more victory points. And then there's also these NPC gnome characters, or in the game, this looks like a tabletop simulator shop, but in the game we had, they were little miniatures that would come on the board. And so you're trying to also fight these gnomes off, which is a way to get victory points as well. That's probably one of the mechanisms I didn't like. I don't know, didn't appreciate it very much, because these gnomes have values on the bottom of them, I think ranging from 1 to 3. So as you go to fight them, there's kind of a luck factor in terms of what the power of those gnomes are as you flip them over and try to fight them. And your opponent may end up fighting all level 1 gnomes, where you flip over 2 level 3 gnomes, right? That can be a dramatic difference. The other thing that really soured me on this is as you start to gain influence and things like that, you can draft some of these special characters down here. If I remember right, they come in 2 varieties. One is like ongoing bonus abilities or game-changing abilities that you can utilize. And then the other, they actually come with a character, if you will, that you get to place into the dungeon. And then that's like one of your hero characters. It has a special ability tied to it, but it's for that particular special character. In the game that we played, we had a scenario where one of my hero characters got removed from the board, aka killed off. There wasn't anything in the rule book that said that couldn't happen, so we let it slide or whatever. But it also just seemed like, for all intents and purposes, for the amount of time and money and resources that I had spent to get that character, it didn't seem right that he could just be removed from the board like any other normal character. But be that as it may, sour grapes. In the end, it just, I don't know, it just didn't seem like almost seemed like there was too much luck in some of the mechanisms of the game, too much randomosity, if you will. And again, I don't mind luck, high luck games, and random factors and stuff like that if the game plays relatively quick. For this game, where our total 5-player gameplay lasted close to 4 hours, that does not sit well with me to invest that much time in a game and then have a luck element kind of throw you off of your strategy. I believe in the end, I finished, like, I want to say 2 or 3 points behind the winner of the game, if you will, and then just kind of chalking it up to those random elements, losing my hero, things like that. I kind of just left with a sour taste. So that being said, I do think that there is some merit to this game. I think there are some cool mechanisms, specifically with that card building, tableau, action chaining mechanism. And then, again, back to the Hall of the Mountain King, the thematics, the art in this, the player pieces, the components, the game trays, it's a beautiful production. And so if I guess as I'm describing the game, if any of those things kind of tip you off, I do think this is worth checking out. Especially, if you can understand the rule book, get maybe a smaller game group to the table. I think this might actually be better with 2 or 3, just in terms of playtime and things like that. So this could be, I guess, worthwhile. Let's see what the other guys had to say on this.
It's like a 7 out of 10 game, like it's not bad per se, but yes, we invested way too much time for what we got. Like you were saying, that tableau building is kind of supposed to replicate like the generations of trolls, like the children and grandchildren throughout time, and their skills evolve. That was really clever and cool. That was cool. And when you were describing it, you made that sound cool, and it was cool. Like that was really cool. That was a fun little puzzle. It kind of boiled down to it felt like a tower defense game, or like like one of those game pandemic where things are like spread. Yeah, and it was like spreading, and like in the very last round, like after you'd built up all this power and ability and like spread out, and of course you're trying to min max area control a little bit, but it was just like, where are the guys going to go? And like I could have mapped it out perfectly what I wanted to do, and in fact I did. I was like, I must control this area, I must control this, and then like the guys come out and you could just lose it, like just based on random, like we're gonna flip the thing and see where the guys come from. I'll just point out, just because it was like game breaking for us, was like there's these like super trolls, whatever you call them, the ones with like special powers that you're bidding on, you're trying to get. And so we each accumulate a bunch. Nate had this awesome one. I had this one, and he could the trolls didn't normally really interact very much. I had this one that could sort of basically eat other trolls, like put them inside of his card. And it must have been like a broken rule or something. But basically, Nate, I was able to swallow Nate's like best roll. I don't think I was supposed to be able to, but it was clear from the way the card was written that I could. And that just basically like won me the game, because I just kind of got in the same area, I swallowed it. And then from that point on, he just was kind of like screwed. So
All right, next game up is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. When we played this game, I believe this was, shortly after this game had hit retail. So this was fairly brand new. And so, had started to hear some of the podcast reviewers give their thoughts on this. So that's kind of what mainly motivated us to get to this to the table. This is a racing game, primarily driven by card play. And the big element here, to kind of align with the name, is that as you shift into higher gears and as you take more risky maneuvers, you start to gain what are dubbed heat cards into your deck. Heat cards in your deck are basically, they clog up your deck. You can't do actions with them. And so there's a balance there to trying to take cooldown actions to get some of those heat cards out of your hand. And in the end, it's just a straight up race game, right? If you've played any of these race games, I mean, there's a number of them out there. Like Formula D is kind of one that comes to my mind, but kind of has a similar mechanism where you need to downshift and not go over a certain speed ranking as you go into a corner. Otherwise, you'll wipe out. And then there is an element of being able to drift and coast past cars if you can, come in behind them, things like that. I don't know what it was. I did not enjoy this game. I can't put my finger on again exactly what it was. I think the mechanisms played fine. I understood it. I had a strategy for, my card play and when to use cooldowns and how to try and get in behind characters. We did, as I understand it, and again, I've only played this the one time at Gamers Ranch. We played what I think is just the basic version. So I do think there is an advanced version which adds in more maybe complex mechanisms with the shifting and card play and things like that. So I warrant myself to check out that advanced gameplay. And I mean, look at this thing. It is ranked 40 overall, number 4 in family games. And I still hear about this game today. I think they've come out with a couple new expansions, but I think this game is going gangbusters. And there's a huge crowd that just adores and loves this game. So again, I owe it to myself to get this back to the table, and I do think that I would want to try out the advanced game. If what I've described here with the card play, the racing, drifting, mechanism sounds intriguing, I mean, obviously check this thing out. I do think, again, I'm probably in the minority for folks who didn't enjoy the gameplay, but I couldn't tell you specifically what I didn't particularly enjoy about it. But let's cut over to the guys and see what they had to say about this one.
Heat Pedal to the Metal is a racing race car game in the vein of F1. I would say um, in terms of racing games, it's probably the most realistic. It has some features where you have to change gears, and as you enter corners, you need to slow down to enter the corner and then really accelerate out of it. There are features it is a deck building game or a hand maybe not a hand building game, but a hand management and deck management game, because you are acquiring heat into your hand. And there's also move forward. Everybody starts with the same deck of cards, so there's move forward. I think what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4s, couple threes. But as you play out your hand, you play as many cards as you have as whatever gear you're in. And so you can play a bunch of cards, but if you're in 5th gear coming up on a corner and you have to play 5 cards, and those are move forward cards, then you come in a little too hot, you get a lot of heat in your hand, and then you have to shed that. And at a certain point, if you have to play heat as a move card, essentially you've stalled and spun out your car, and there are significant repercussions to that, probably unrecoverable repercussions to that. And the irrecoverability of it is similar to a game of attrition, where it just becomes not fun when you're in the back and have no hope of recovery. Overall, I would say I enjoy Downforce as a racing game a little bit more. I like the little bit more chaos in Downforce. I like the betting aspect of it. And yeah, overall, just a more fun game for me to play. Although Heat, the one thing I will give it credit for is just a little bit more uh, uh, ties a little bit better to the theme of the game with the heat actually getting into your deckhand.
Okay, last but not least, the game here is Captain Sonar. You might be asking yourself, Nate, why are you reviewing this on your, your deeper strategy games? I'll be honest, I debated whether to put it in kind of with this series or with the party game series. Uh, and so, there's kind of the breadth of where I feel like this game could fall. Ultimately, it landed here just because I feel like for Captain Sonar to really shine, you do want to play it with folks that are uh, have a high amount of strategy, are highly competitive. I just felt like I've played Captain Sonar with groups in more of that party game setting, and I felt like it's been kind of a dud. To explain this, it is I think you can play it at variable player counts. I think it shines with a full complement of 8, which is to say it is a 4 versus 4 team game. And on a team of 4, you are navigating your sub through the water, and each one of the people on your team has a different role. Like you have one that is the captain or the navigator. You have one that is your engineer. You have one that is your sonar specialist. You have one that's your weapons specialist, right? And with that, you each have different things that you are responsible for tracking and or executing as part of this real-time strategy game. And that's where this game shines. Is it's team versus team. You're basically racing to find out where the other team's sub is, start to launch weapons at it, hopefully get some hits, and then ultimately sink the other team's sub. There's a lot of components that play together in terms of the captain can call out particular directions that he wants to go, but there's a contingency in the directions that he wants to go versus the engineer and or the weapons expert being able to mark off things on their map to say like, hey, I need to get a left turn so that we can start to work in to do a cooldown mechanism on some of these things. As an example, I think this is the engineer sheet, if you will. No, this looks to be the weapons specialist. But you can see like as you move south, you get to mark off some of these things. As you move east, you get to mark off some of these things. So there has to be heavy coordination between this weapons specialist and the captain, right? Even though the captain wants to keep heading north, the weapons specialist says like, hey, we need to start heading west so I can start marking off some of these things on my board. So there's that collaboration. My personal opinion, the sonar specialist is probably one of the most fun ones because what they are doing is they have a little overlay here, and they're listening to the opponent's captain on the directions that they are going, right? And so as they're marking off where the directions that the opponent's sub is potentially moving, they're moving this overlay around their board because as you can see here, there are some points where like this particular, if the sub has gone through these motions, that particular, movement series wouldn't fit in this section here. They would have hit land on one of those sections. That's the cool part of this is like using that to deduce where the opponent's sub may be. And there are, I think every game I've played of this, there are key moments where after a particular move, the sonar specialist is like, I know where they're at. And so you start to share that information to immediately start getting your sub within striking distance to launch or torpedo or a missile or things like that. Again, if you don't have the full engagement of the team, and there's a lot going on in this between, not only the chatter of your own team, but then the sonar specialist trying to pick up the chatter of the opposing team. I do not think that this fits well with groups that are just, there for more party style games. I have never tried it, but I can imagine if I were to play this with my family or my wife's family, that it would not go over well. And so I do think this is a little more depthy strategy game, in my personal opinion, at least, with the types of players that will excel at playing this. Our particular game at Gamers Ranch was perfect, right? We had a full complement of players. It was a very back and forth game. In fact, if I remember, each sub had kind of taken a couple of hits, and it kind of came down to the last, final seconds. I believe our team won. We got within striking range, called off our missile, and ended up blowing up the other ship. But in kind of the decomp afterwards, it sounded like they knew exactly where we were at. They were a matter of, turns or seconds from shooting a torpedo at us, so it could have gone either way. But I love this game. It's unfortunate because I've owned this for a number of years. When did this come out here? But I think I've played this like less than 5 times total, and so it's a shame. It is a game though that I think I will keep around because it's so unique in that factor that I don't think I've ever played another game quite like this, that plays with that many people, and gives you kind of that strategy and tactical, I don't know what it is, tactical negotiations and collaboration with your team to kind of pull everything together. So let's hear from the guys on what they had to say on this one.
For anyone who's never played this, the easiest explanation is like it's real-time battleship, right? It is a team-based game. There's 2 teams. You are each controlling a rival submarine. You're moving around on a game board. The really cool thing about the game, it is real time, so everyone's going as quickly as possible. You're making moves as quickly as you want to. And each person on the team has a different role, a very specific role. So there's the captain who's shouting out commands. They basically control it and where you're going, and they make the ultimate decisions. I don't remember all the names of the roles, but like there's a radio operator. Their whole job is to listen to what the other team is doing and trying to track their submarine, right? Because this is all happening across the table from each other. So everybody hears exactly what the other sub is doing, go north, go east, go west. But to try to keep track of it is really hard because you're both doing it at the same time. There is, I believe it's an engineer, and the engineer's job is kind of to track. There's these interconnected systems, and just simply said, as you cross off things, you lose access to certain weapon systems, etc. So you have to like make sure you move in certain orders to kind of keep those clear and usable. And then I can't remember if the last person's called weapons operator or something. And yeah, their job is to like kind of keep track of what weapons are powered up and kind of inform the captain, hey, you can use your radar, you can use your sonar, you can launch a torpedo, you can throw it on a mine, whatever. And so all this is happening in real time. And it's just great because the captain is saying, like, hey, what can I do sonar? No, not yet. And then, you got to talk to the engineer. You need to go like west south to get that cleared out. Okay, like that might not work on the map because you could go off the edge of the board or like run into an island, which you're not allowed to do any of those things. The other team is doing it as well. So that's the summary of how the game works. I'll go into a little bit of like how our game went. It was kind of interesting. This is a game we first played, I don't know, a decade ago. And we had played it a handful of times and kind of really enjoyed it. And it hadn't played it in a while. And it came up this weekend, and we had 8 people, which is the perfect number for it. And my brother and I, both liked it. And we were like, hey, let's get this going. We talked people into playing it. So it was kind of funny. Like, one group had maybe played a little bit more, and so like I was the captain, and I knew that like making very quick moves like allowed you to power up weapons quickly and then clear off your engineering board quickly. And so I was just flying out of the gate, and Garrett was the other captain, and he was like really thinking through what he wanted to do, and I think I had made probably 10 moves by the time he made his second move or something like that. So, but the great thing about the game that I hadn't really realized until this one was none of that matters, right? Like we were outplaying the other team, but you have to be within a certain range to fire on them. And so it's like it's a game of cat and mouse. Like you're chasing them, you're running away, like simultaneously you're moving, you're trying to get closer, but then once everyone's shooting, you want to get away, and you can't do both simultaneously, obviously. So a really well designed game, in the fact that even if we were playing better, it didn't matter, because we fired at them, they fired at us. It was nip and tuck the whole way.
You were playing quicker. We were playing very methodical. We were taking our time, just listening to what your little submarine engines were doing, and we actually did reasonably well, I thought,
Oh yeah.
uh, for how uncoordinated our group of subway members were. Dan was getting real owly because he was tracking their ship, and we had made 2 moves, and they had made 10, and surfaced and dropped, and was yelling at us, and me and the other guy were just trucking along. But that series of moves that enable you to clear off your I guess it's your diagnostic map that enables your torpedoes and things to work. That's key to the game, and really, if you're going to play this with new people, definitely want to explain that, especially if the captain is a new person. I got it probably 2 or 3 minutes into the game. I recognize that those series of moves need to be made to help keep that clear, keep your subway functioning at in all capacities. And once we did that, we started to play a lot better, and actually got a couple of really close, good shots off with torpedoes to try to take them out. And we might have been 1 or 2 spaces off, but yeah, it was a really close game. And although we got what felt like was crushed, I would play this game again in a heartbeat. It was really fun.
I can't remember the exact group we played with. My dad, and he was, like a guy who loved submarines, so we knew he would love it. I know my brother was playing, my sister and probably her boyfriend were playing it. And then, it's like my sister, so half of that group is not heavy duty, intense gamers at all. But I think we explained it well enough. And like we've been saying, the roles, there's some that are pretty complicated and some that are pretty simple, right? Like the munitions expert is probably the easiest role. So if you're playing with somebody, a group, and you see somebody who's like not super into it, or you can tell they won't be on top of it, like that's a pretty good role for them. The radio expert, it's very hard, but at the same time, like whoever it is, they're going to make mistakes, right? So it almost doesn't matter like how good they are at it, because even a really good person is going to make a ton of mistakes at it. So yeah, I think it went over well. We had a really good time.
I was whatever this role is. I don't remember what you called it. This game felt way too stressful for me. Like Matt was saying north, northwest, whatever, like confirmed, all this stuff. Like, I don't know, like when I'm playing a game, I don't want to feel like I'm really on a submarine, like people's lives are dependent on me not messing up. Like, I feel like, if I hadn't done, ultimately we end up winning, and it was pretty close, but like, I feel like this is one of those games that's just really quick, and you have to be, but you can let your whole team down. Like, if if you're too slow doing something, or you tell them to do the wrong thing, um, it kind of detracted me from this, like, future playthroughs.
I
We
was going to
played
bring
it
up,
quick because Matt is experienced. I don't think every game plays
Yeah.
at that pace. I should say too that there is an option to play this game as a turn-based game if you want to. I will say this game shines with 8 people, because with 8
Mhm.
people, everyone has their own role. You can play it with fewer, but then you're taking on potentially more than one role. I would do that, but really, if you've got 8 players, this is the perfect game.
Well, and the whole thing is like the confusion of like all 8 people like talking over each other and stuff. The one thing I was gonna say, like, and Dustin brought up, it was stressful. Like there was like half of the game that we were having like this real-time argument about like which spaces he should be crossing off, because you have a little bit of optionality. Like there's some that you can cross off and they get cleared out more quickly, and then there's some that you can cross off and they don't negatively impact you, but they also don't get cleared off as often. And so we were like, we were arguing. I was like, no, cross that one. He's like, no, I'm not doing it. And like, so we're like trying to like drive the submarine around like while we're like arguing with each other, which I'm sure didn't help Dan as the opponent radio operator, like trying to listen into that whole conversation.
That was challenging.
I will point out during the pandemic, my family played this once online over FaceTime or something like that, and it actually worked. Like I don't know. Yeah, so you can play it. You can play it like set up your own like little online version of it.
Okay, that is a wrap for episode 3 and kind of some of our deeper strategy games. We'll continue the series here next week with kind of more of these strategy type games. And if you guys could, comment below on what you like, what you don't like. Please subscribe to stay tuned for more content. And hope to see you back here soon. Thank you.